Good morning.
I hereby call this meeting of Lake Mary Toastmasters Club 6440 to order. Before we begin, please silence your cell phones.
No way. No way.
I would like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
Everybody's sitting down. Nobody kneeling.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Our club mission is to provide a supportive learning environment through which members feel empowered to become better public speakers by developing their competent communication and leadership skills. This morning I would like to welcome our Toastmasters, Miss Julia Hoffman.
Good morning, everybody. Very fine Tuesday. So today's theme is current events. I thought that's very appropriate with all the stuff in the news today, political campaigning and all the stuff in the news. And I was curious about how everyone got their news. I personally am old school and still love newspaper. I adore getting up in the morning and walking outside and getting my newspaper. Julia looks at me, she probably can relate. And just sitting down and reading my paper while I have my coffee. It's just easier for me to read the paper versus the iPad. But I also feel like I'm double. I split my time between getting my news from here. So I'm curious to find out how you guys get your current events from and what your preferences are and what's in the news today. So we'll have some great questions from our table topics master today. So get ready for some current event questions. We have a loaded schedule. We're going to get right to our technical table. Starting out with our grammarian, Stacy, can you tell me what your role is all about?
As grammarian, it is my function to select a word of the day to help build members' vocabularies. Each member, when called upon to speak, is encouraged to use the word of the day. Other members may gently rap on the table when they hear a member use the word of the day. The word of the day today is cusp. It's a noun. It's a pointed end where two curves meet, in particular a point at which a direction of a curve is abruptly reversed. In astrology, it is the initial point of an astrological sign or house. For an example, he was in Aries on the cusp with Taurus. In addition, I will be listening to any errors in grammar, as well as excellent word selections. I will also be noting any colorful thoughts or phrases members might use. During the evaluation portion of the meeting, I will present my report.
All right, thank you, Stacy. Moving right into our off-counter role. Bob, tell us about your role.
Yay.
This is going to be interesting as a person who has a hearing problem. As our counter, it is my function to listen for the use of the filler words such as I, you know, so, okay, and other audible pauses as fillers. I will be noting if members perform any of the dreaded double clutches, which means to say things twice, such as this means, this means. Finally, I will also include things which might be distracting, such as lip smacks. I will present my report during the evaluation portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Bob. Keeping us on cusp of our meeting today, it's a noun, it works, is my cue, my control.
Well, good morning, everybody. Got a bunch of time of speeches and table topics and all the other good stuff going on. So we got 5 to 7, we got 5, we got 6, and then we got 7 for one lady in here. You're, what is it, 7, 8, 9?
Yep,
7, 8, and 9. Table topics, you have 30 seconds, and then you'll start seeing cards, and you see the red cards, sit down.
report. I'll give you the end of my speech.
All right. Thank you, Marty. Let's get started. For our guests, we have a very structured meeting. We start with our speakers. We start then with our table topics, followed by our education part of the meeting with evaluation. So our first speaker of the day is Ms. Phyllis Harley, and she's going to be speaking from the Competent Communications Manual, project number 6, Vocal Variety. Please welcome Phyllis as she addresses Under God and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, good morning. And I have continued on a theme we had in a couple meetings ago from a speech with Rich. I am not going to be quite as verbal and high energy as Rich was, because mine is a little bit more cerebral, dealing with the Pledge of Allegiance. This was actually taken, portions of this were taken from a speech I heard probably about 6 or 7 years ago, which changed the way I say the Pledge of Allegiance. And what I'm going to give you a little bit of today is some history of where the Pledge of Allegiance came from, how it's changed over the years, and how we go, what is the proper way to go about saying the Pledge of Allegiance. First off, let me give it to you in its original form. I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Seems a little odd. Some words are missing, and we have a little bit different physicality, salute, thank you, to the pledge. The pledge actually began not until the 1890s. It was authored by a gentleman named Francis Bellamy, who actually was an author for a publication called The Youth's Companion. The entire purpose of him coming up with the pledge was for something for students to say at a celebration for Columbus Day. Just as an aside, he is also one of the founding members and the push for why we have the holiday Columbus Day. Anybody realize we just had that a couple weeks ago? Maybe your bank was closed? We don't do much more nowadays. Mr. Bellamy was looking for a speech that students could say in celebration of the Columbus Day holiday that he was also pushing to have entered. And he spent, from his own notes, about 2 hours coming up with this. It's a sentence, it's not very long. The salute he came up with was actually used up into about the 1930s. Anybody guess why we stopped using that kind of salute around the 1930s? So, with that, with the changes that have happened, they actually have gone back and looked at further notes from Mr. Bellamy to see if there were any other intents that he had, and basically going through all of his notes, these changes that we have had to the pledge over the years, both in the salute and the words, basically come from our own traditions, not from anything that he intended originally. So where did the changes start? First off, 1890s. So when our country started, there was no pledge. There was nothing denoted by our founding fathers that we should have a pledge to our flag or a pledge to our country. As you could probably understand, those of you who know a little bit of the history, people weren't all that enthusiastic about the United States to begin with. But it was in the 1890s where this pledge first started, and it started, as many things do, focusing on school children. That was the whole intent and purpose of this, was just for the school children to have something to recite, not necessarily for us to be pledging our allegiance to the flag. However, popularity, it grew and it gained momentum. So in the 1923 was actually when we added up changing my flag to the United States of America, changing those words. Not a big change, also done by community groups who were pushing that we needed to recognize that the 1920s, our country is now much more cohesive. We've gone through an original constitution, we've gone through our Articles of Confederation, and then into our Constitution, and then we had a nice Civil War, which almost broke us apart, and now we're in the 1920s where our country really has found its cohesiveness, and it is becoming something more that people actually are having a identity as an American, not as a Georgian, not as a New Yorker. Then the next change comes in the 1942s, where it actually, 1942, where we actually finally adopted the Pledge of Allegiance. And this is where the pledge actually becomes official, formal, and this is what we say as American citizens to show our loyalty to our country. Not until the 1940s is it an actual recognized by act of Congress. And it's also on this cusp in the 1950s where we also get our next biggest change to our Pledge of Allegiance, which is where the words "under God" come into it. And this is what first brought my attention, was talking about how and why "under God" was added to it. Even though Mr. Bellamy himself was an ordained minister, he didn't intend for this to have any type of religious connotation. But it was in the 1940s when "under God" was formally, 1954, when "under God" was formally adopted into our Pledge of Allegiance by President Dwight Eisenhower, not as a form of religious connotation, but just showing that our country and as a whole, we have a background where we generally all believe in a higher power, much in the way that we have "in God we trust" in our money. Of course, there's been many challenges to it. There's actually a current challenge, I believe it's still in the U.S. Court of Appeals, it has not gone to the Supreme Court, concerning those words. But the purpose for the "under God" also being added to had a political meaning to it. In the 40s and 50s, or actually 30s, 40s, and 50s is where we had the Red Scare. And in communism, the communist ideals were that there is no higher power. And so part of adding "under God" into the pledge was a way to try to find out if you were a communist or not, to see if you would say the pledge with the words "under God" in it. So finally, to round out our actual current pledge, we take many pauses throughout because we all are used to the cadence and the form that we say it. Much like if you are a parent and you hear the ABC song, everybody knows A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But if you have kids, there's tons of different ways now and tons of different tunes that you could hear that, but everybody knows that tune. Just like the Pledge of Allegiance, everybody knows that tune. And one of the things that we actually, as a group, say incorrectly is the "under God" phrase. So I'm going to say it for you the way it actually should grammatically be said. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm a Toastmaster. Thank you.
May we have a minute on the clock, please? For guests, there are informal evaluations. Please feel free to fill that out and give Phyllis feedback about its uses. Hi, Teresa. Morning. I know.
Pencils down.
Thank you, Mr. Timer. Our next speaker believes speeches are like steer horns, a point here, a cusp there, and a lot of roll in between. Today he will be presenting from the Competent Communications Manual, speech number 4, his speech entitled Happiness. Please welcome the Candyman, Candido.
Here's not a good question. What do you think is your purpose in life? Hold your thought. The answers differs amongst individuals. For example, an all-talk, no-action politician may run for president and become the most powerful man in the country. A geneticist may aim to alter DNA to mitigate genetic defects. A mad scientist may aim to invent a highly destructive weapon and take over the world, like Pinky and the Brain. The other one is a genius, the other one is insane. However, when you ask the politicians, the geneticists, except the mad scientists, why they aim at such things, they would reply that these achievements will give them purpose in life and make them happy. Everyone craves for happiness, yet the pursuit of happiness seems so elusive. Fellow members and guests, how you doing? We live in a highly competitive society. Each of us trying to surpass each other in wealth, popularity, and social prestige. If things doesn't tilt in our favor, we're not happy. If you don't get what you want, you are not happy. If I forget my wife's birthday, she's not happy. And I might end up sleeping along with a dog. But I'm happy. Can we obtain happiness by pursuing pleasure? Is pleasure and happiness the same thing? If you characterize, pleasure is dependent upon time, upon place, upon its object. For example, mouth-watering chocolate cake. The first serving is delicious. The other one, not so much. Then we feel disgust. That's the human nature. We get bored. I am an avid fan of humorist Jerry Seinfeld. Everybody knows him, right? I love to watch his show 2-3 times. If I had to watch it 24 hours, it might be very tiring. Pleasure consumes itself as you experience it. That's the difference. Now, how many people want to feel miserable? Need a hands. How many people want to feel happy? I guess everybody. Well, here's the thing. According to this man, you know this guy? He's not bald, but he's bald. The very purpose of our life is to seek happiness. That's the very purpose of our life, is to seek happiness. Ladies and gentlemen, meet 67-year-old Matthew Ricard. Dr. Ricard is molecular biologist. He abandoned his prestigious career, wealth, and fame, and went to the Himalayas and transformed into a body smoke. I'm not saying you transform into a body smoke and you become happy. I'm not advocating that. But what he says was, today, Matthew Ricard regarded the happiest man alive. You might be wondering what constitutes his claim. Cognitive scientists in Wisconsin schemed into Ricard's brain. He underwent 4 hours of complicated MRI scan. You're familiar with MRI scan? Experts were stunned when the brain scan results have shown extremely high levels of upbeat activities. His level of mind control is astonishing. The levels of upbeat impulses in his brain is off the scale. Now, here's the thing. The man doesn't have money. He's totally broke, barely enough food to eat, and celibated for 30 years. How could it be possible for him to be the happiest man alive? It's totally unexpected. Dr. Ricard explained, happiness is a mental attitude, a state of mind not primarily dependent on external conditions. Happiness is skill to be learned. It requires training and starts with meditation. Its aim is to set free the inner human potential that everybody has. To be truly happy, we have to clear our mental toxins. What are these? This is greed, hatred, obsession. And make changes from within ourselves and cultivate a positive trait, such as humility and altruism. Developing a lifestyle of happiness requires work and a great deal of practice. The more we practice happiness, the more natural it will become. Think about this. People spend lifetime searching for happiness, looking for peace. They chase life dreams, religions, addiction, hoping to fill the emptiness that burdens them. The irony is the only place we ever needed to search is within ourselves. We can make ourselves happy or unhappy when no one and nothing else can. That is because we control how we think and how we respond to life. Basically, we make choices every day that determine whether or not we are going to enjoy our lives and be our best. I believe true happiness is priceless. External conditions such as wealth, fame, power does not guarantee happiness. We cannot buy happiness because it's illegal. And nobody can sell it to us. It is a part of human experience and it comes from within us. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. That was the happiest speech I've heard in a long time. Can we have a minute on the clock, please?
Hands down.
Right. Our third and final speaker this morning will be speaking from the Persuasive Speaking Manual, speech number 4, Addressing the Opposition. Her speech will be on a controversial topic that continues to be a major problem today. Please help me welcome Macarena Torres with her speech on sexual harassment.
Sexual harassment. A controversial subject that has lately been, shall we say, saturating our news channels and Facebook feeds in recent days. Most recently regarding one of our presidential candidates and what he calls locker room talk. I tell you that I am on the cusp of losing it if I hear anything else about this subject matter. But let's forget about the election and the fact that he is running for president. But look at him as a man who has bragged about sexually harassing and assaulting women. Now, he's not the first person to have done this. A couple of years ago, it was Bill Cosby. And I fear that he won't be the last. All he did was shine a light on the subject matter. Now, it's important to be aware that this is unacceptable behavior, and it is a problem going back centuries. Yet here we are in 2016, and we're still dealing with it today. So what exactly is sexual harassment, and where do you draw the line? Sexual harassment is defined as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. Now there's a key word in that definition. Did anyone catch it? Unwelcome, meaning it's unacceptable and above all, disrespectful. Whenever we hear about sexual harassment situations, there's always questions that arise with it. Is the victim telling the truth? Did it happen once? Is it a repeating offense? Is she being a little bit too sensitive? Is she over-exaggerating? Men, you know women do that a lot. Now, the workplace is one of the most common places people experience sexual harassment or encounter sexual harassment or a sexual assault. Cosmopolitan surveyed 2,235 full-time and part-time female employees and found that 1 in every 3 women between the ages of 18 and 34 have experienced sexual harassment at work. It is not something that can be ignored. It can have a negative effect on the victim's career. Some believe that if you can't handle sexual harassment, you shouldn't be working there to begin with, or shouldn't even be in the workforce at all. Now think about that for a second. Are you saying that women are not strong enough to handle sexual harassment? Do you think that those who believe that women who experience sexual harassment are to blame and should quit their jobs? Are you saying it's the victim's fault? Now, teenagers and young adults in the workforce can become vulnerable to acts of sexual harassment because they lack the awareness and they lack the awareness of their rights as an employee, and they do not have enough work experience and maturity to address this kinds of situations. For example, this exact situation happened to me, and I guess I was a teenager. I was 17 years old, working at my very first job. It was in retail. And one of the assistant managers started to stand a little too close to me. Started to put his arm around me. Started to ask subtle but inappropriate questions. I didn't know him. I didn't want to know him. But I pushed my feelings aside. It wasn't until another employee, also 17 years old, approached me in private, asking me if this person has ever touched me or asked me inappropriate questions. I stared at her, and I said, "Why do you ask?" And she said she was experiencing the same thing. Aha. I was not the only one. According to the EEOC, it is a form of sex discrimination that violates Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Most victims develop a fear of being fired if they complained. However, the act forbids employers from retaliating against you if you decide to speak out about sexual harassment. So that's exactly what we did. We went to the manager, talked to him about it, filled out a form, and turned it in. A week later, he was fired. If any of you have never seen Michelle Obama's speech she made on October 13th, then I strongly recommend you watch that speech because it really encompasses what's going on in modern society when it comes to sexual harassment today. The behavior that men tend to shrug off may be harmful and very uncomfortable to women who, just like men, need to be treated with dignity and respect no matter what. No matter where you're either in work, in school, or even at the grocery store. It is something that has once again become a topic of discussion today, and one that cannot be ignored any longer. So I'll ask you, where do you draw the line? Now I'm going to take this time to answer some questions. If anybody has anything to say or anything they want to add to the discussion, I'll be more than happy to answer or to even hear you. Yes?
Is it subjective?
Subjective?
Yes. Is it based upon the interpretation of the person being harassed?
Every situation is different. In my case, it was subtle. He was standing a little too close, not doing very many movements that were way overboard. But it was enough to make me feel uncomfortable. There are other women that have felt that he stepped way over the line. He grabbed something that he shouldn't have grabbed. He asked questions that he shouldn't have asked. Very inappropriate. And there are women that feel very uncomfortable and they are afraid because here's the thing. Men do experience sexual harassment, but at a much less percentage than women. Men usually experience it from their peers. Women usually experience it from their superiors.
If he was very attractive and you were interested in dating him, would you have considered it that way, or?
Here's the definition of sexual harassment, unwanted. That key word that I mentioned before, unwanted. Now if you wanted it, well then, you want it. You're not going to do anything about it, you're going to go after it, are you not? But sexual harassment, that key word, the very first word of the definition is unwanted.
You need to test first.
Anyone else?
Just on that one. Devil's advocate here, devil's advocate, not a sexual harasser.
We know you're not.
How is a man supposed to know it's unwanted until he's either told it's unwanted or he tests the waters?
Here's something that women need to do, and women don't often do because, again, there's a fear factor. Women need to address the issue immediate and nip it in the butt. Okay? A lot of women, like myself, I was a teenager. I brushed it aside, thinking it was just me. I was over-exaggerating, like I was thinking about it too much. Maybe it was nothing. However, if the situation continues, then you need to address it and nip it in the bud immediately. And if it does not stop, then you need to take it to a higher power. Anyone else? Richard.
I am a sexual harasser.
We knew that.
My question is, where do we draw the line between victim blaming and taking personal responsibility?
Touche. Women. There are women that go to work.
Put those cards away. I want to hear this.
I am aware of this. Women that go to work that wear outfits that they shouldn't be wearing. They show a little bit too much cleavage. They wear their skirts a little bit too high up. So they're pretty much saying, without saying it, that I'm available. Correct? Am I right?
That's my question.
Right.
It's advertising.
So
No, that just turned into slut shaming right there.
There's that line that women that obviously do not want it are going to dress a little bit better. Do you agree?
No.
They're not going to. I've never.
You've got Kerri shaking her head right across from you. No.
Yeah.
I agree.
You cannot put what the person is wearing as saying that they are or that they are asking for it or not, because that's the same as just saying what I'm wearing is going to ask somebody to rape me. That's not, you can't say that.
Whoa,
racist.
whoa.
No, but it's not
Jesus, wait, why don't we
racist.
go
It's
right
not
to the
sexual
R word?
assault.
Why do we go right to the
So it includes the
Why do we go right to rape?
Conversation over, time's up.
Why do we do that? Why
Get so involved that you forget.
No, but I should be able to wear whatever I want to without getting somebody to, you know, make comments or sexually harass me at the workplace.
I have a quick story.
I'll
I'll tell you my most recent experience with sexual harassment was in the person reporting it to me. One of our attorneys in court had a bank rep sitting next to her waiting for a trial, and this bank rep started asking her about her availability, telling her about the sexual exploits between him and his girlfriend while they're waiting in court to hear a judge. So just because it does happen to be young women and people who are not professionals, does not mean it doesn't happen at a larger scale. And I had to report this person to the law firm we work for and went up the scale. So that's just a story, hopefully.
Yeah, well, like I said, okay.
Hold on, my question was not answered.
If anybody
Where do
wants
we
to
draw
talk
the
to me
line
afterwards,
between
we can talk
victim?
afterwards, but thank you.
I'd like to put my name on the agenda for a speech, please. For next week.
Hey, we're gonna double team that speech, bro.
Yeah.
You got him.
We're gonna DP it.
Contemplation.
Write down your
Formal
comments.
evaluations. Thank you, Mac.
Time for a debate meeting.
Q&A, please.
Hands down.
Thank you, Mike. After that controversy, we still have time for a couple of questions. Please welcome to the lectern Ms. Kerri Bird for our table topic.
For our guests in the room, table topics is a time where we call on random people to stand up and answer questions so that everybody can get a turn to speak. A representative of Indigenous people in Canada went to court to prevent the Cleveland Indians from being able to use their Chief Wahoo logo and to have them referred to as the Cleveland team versus the Cleveland Indians before tonight's game. What do you think about that, Rich?
I knew it. Very weak applause, by the way. What do I think about changing the name or the controversy itself?
The controversy itself.
I feel that do I feel they should change the name? That's up to debate, but I do feel that we're getting into a climate in our country where we have to stop pandering to people who are being offended. If the Indians themselves or Native Americans are not offended, then I don't know why a bunch of white people are. So that is my answer to that.
Good answer.
Thank you. Okay. Next question. Do you think that the media and journalists are biased in their reporting?
Can I answer this question?
Yes. Next question.
Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. The media, the politicians, or the citizens? I think it is a matter of point of view. There are two sides to every story. I think we should be able to listen to those who say the media are biased, and we don't hear from the people. The media does not respond much, but they do their job. In my household, my wife and I were always going on the channels. She likes one news station, that will say the media is not biased, and I like another network that is different. So if I want to be spiritual, I said, let's go to Channel 22. She said, no, we get a lot of that at church. We've got to hear that. So I think it's a personal responsibility each citizen has to take to be able to know whether the media is biased. We must be able to read the news, whether it's the print media, the newspaper, the internet, you watch the TV. That keeps us so informed so that as citizens on the 8th of November will be able to make very, very informed decision. For the 90 seconds, we have to be able to fill out the form and push it in. So I don't think the media is biased. We need to hear from both sides. And I'll give it up next.
It has been reported from Europe, I read about this just a couple days ago, that with many of the migrants that they've had coming into Europe over the past couple of years, that they have been making deals with the countries of origin of those people to try to send them back. What do you think about that?
Table Topics Master, what is happening with the Syrian refugees flooding into Europe is a repetition of what has happened historically throughout European history, and we've seen a lot of the colors of that appearing in the United States. The difficulty generally comes with that, if depending again on where you stand. Those who are coming in are trying to find a way for a better life, either fleeing something that is awful or running towards something they see as so much better. Granted that the people who are already living in those countries see these other ones coming in, and they're seeing a different culture coming in, different languages, and they're not comfortable. Change is happening. Change always happens, but change is also always fought. The negotiations on to send them back is the same problem we have when we have to deal with people who are asking for asylum. Are they there for a good reason? Are they asking for the asylum for a good reason? Are they simply trying to go for a better prospect because their options aren't available there? Or are they looking at being killed or persecuted, jailed, or from where they're coming from for reasons that are, we would believe, inappropriate, political reasons in general? It's always going to be a political answer, and it's never going to be an easy black or white. People are going to look at it as black and white because of their political views. But from the stance of their political view is where they made their decision, and it's based off the politics of their location and the people who are coming in. I don't have an answer, and I don't want anyone looking at it as black and white, and anyone who tries to throw it at me as it's a black or white, I'm just going to turn around and take the other side, whether I agree with it or not, because until you look at the other sides, and it's not just two sides, there's more. Until you look at all the aspects of the problem, you are the problem. Madam Tabletop.
All right, right into the educational part of our meeting. Please welcome to the lectern Mr. Ernst.
Good morning, my fellow Toastmasters, fellow members, and honored guests. The general evaluation portion of the meeting is actually at the cusp of the meeting.
Oh.
That's where we pull everything together. That's where we get feedback on all the things we're doing here in Toastmasters. In fact, you know, the general evaluation portion is one of the most important parts because we as Toastmasters need feedback. Starting out with our speakers. It gives me a pleasure to introduce Teryl McLean, who's evaluate speaker number 1, under God, Pledge of Allegiance, Phyllis.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and of course, Phyllis. I was excited when I found out I was going to be able to evaluate you because I still remember your baby speech. Personal favorite. Your challenge with this particular speech was to use vocal variety. And I thought you did a great job. I thought you used pace really, really well. You slowed down when you wanted to emphasize something in particular, and you sped up for the same reason. So I thought you had great pace, really good variety. The extra force that you used when you said the Pledge of Allegiance, I thought really helped communicate the importance of what you were about to say. You had great enunciation. You're an exceptionally clear speaker, and it makes it really easy for us, your audience, to understand and follow you and follow what you're saying. One thing I wanted to point out, and I'm very conscious of this because I do it too, is you tend to do a hip slap, and I'm conscious of it because I tend to do this. And I think it's just your nerves a little bit, but also your natural energy, you're just channeling it, so something to be conscious of. I'm just, again, very sensitive to unconscious gestures like that because I tend to do a lot of them. So I noticed it, I don't think it was distracting. Again, it just felt like natural energy and enthusiasm. Maybe a little more emphasis or use of pace. I think you're very similar to the way I speak, kind of conversational and casual, but not a lot of pace variety. We tend to speak very thoughtfully, I think, and so it doesn't lend itself to a lot of pace. So I thought you could have used a little more pace, especially when you were about to start the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, actually, I'm sorry, you did use it really well there, but when you were emphasizing certain words within the Pledge of Allegiance, you kind of did it all along the same pace, but it was a minor thing. I still thought there were instances where you used it very effectively. Again, when you were about to start the Pledge of Allegiance, you took a big pause, and then you slowed your pace down, so we kind of got that this was very important. You drew us in and grabbed our attention. You have an inherently nice pitch. I know the speech wanted you to play with your pitch a lot. I thought you did a really great job of using it. I'm not sure it would have sounded completely genuine for you to really do a lot of crazy stuff with your pitch, again, because I think you just have that very casual but authoritative natural quality to the way that you speak. Sorry. Oh, the ABC song really let you fluctuate your weight and play with your pitch a bit more there. I thought you could have done a little more with the pledge, again, just to emphasize that the final recitation that you did was really important. But you did use the pauses very effective. And overall, I thought your vocal variety was effective. I thought you got our attention and kept it the whole way through. Your topics, I thought you completed this particular assignment very effectively.
Thank you, Teryl. Very nice evaluation. Evaluating speaker number 2, Candido Calican, is in regards, his subject was happiness from the company communications. Now number 4, how to say it, is Shayne Jasper.
What an awesome lineup of speeches we had today. All of them powerful, controversial in some ways. During Macarena's speech, I was on the cusp of blowing my top. So, good job. You got people thinking. Candido, I thought you did a fantastic job. Your opening instantly had everybody captivated. I love the way that you take your time on dictating your words, on pronunciating your words. I know that English is your second language, but I think that your accent actually draws people in more because they want to hear what you have to say. That and the fact that you throw humor in there enough to keep us interested and laughing and really enjoying your topics. Every time you speak, you use just enough humor. It's not over the top, but it's just enough to keep people interested and enjoying the topic. The setup was fantastic. I loved how you talked about you basically get to choose what you want to be. You can become anything. You used the example of president. You used the example of biologist overcoming world problems, and there was a third one. Forgive me, I forget what it was. But I loved how you set the tone with you get to choose what you want to become. And then you kept that tone going. Phrases like happiness is a choice, You just had a good undertone of your outcome in life is based upon your choices. And so we get to choose exactly who and what we want to be. We need to choose whether we're happy or miserable. You brought up a great point that nobody would choose to be miserable, yet there are so many people in this world that have in one way or another chosen to be miserable. I thought it was fantastic. You really just hammered home the subject that all of this is a choice, and it's our responsibility to decide whether or not we want to be happy, sad, miserable, accomplished, not accomplished. I thought that was fantastic. I'm a strong believer in personal choice. So you did a great job with the topic or the manual. Yeah, the project number 4, how to say it. You kept it simple. You kept it clear. You kept us interested the whole time. Fantastic job there. I really appreciated your strong presence. The only bit of suggestion that I could have for you is pull this back so that you can stand here and command the room, because you were standing here and commanding the room, and these guys back here, they missed a little bit of the Candido that we love. That's my only suggestion. Otherwise, fantastic job. I really enjoyed it. Great job.
Evaluating speaker number 3, Macarena Torres,
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
who was speaking from the Persuasive speaking manual. Objective number 4, addressing the opposition on sexual harassment. It is nobody else who can discuss this subject. I got to say something. I'm European, so I'm glad I'm not the However, over the years, I was sexually harassed many times, by female and by male. But I never complained about it. Told them to buzz off. I
like how he's looking at
Want an introduction?
Yeah, where do you go from there? I've been on the cusp of regretting responding to Julia's email ever since I noticed the title. Can't win. But I did not have sexual relations with. With all seriousness, I thought, Macarena, you did a very good job in introducing a very difficult and apparently sensitive topic over here. You warmed us up, I think, well with your introduction. You used a lot of open-ended questions, and you drew the entire audience in because, yes, we are all feeling a bit overwhelmed, especially with today's news cycle on this subject. So the objectives were to prepare a talk on a controversial subject. I believe this is about as controversial as we can get after that Q&A. And there was, an objective to persuade the audience to accept or at least consider your viewpoint. And I thought with your use of the surveys and your stories, and especially with defining sexual harassment, I thought you did a good job of, yes, engaging the entire audience to at least accept or listen to your argument. So I thought you did three things very well. Again, with a good introduction and defining it, and literally asking us to think that sexual harassment is unwelcome and unwanted. And when you used a lot of open-ended questions, I think everybody was thinking for themselves, can I understand at least where you are coming from? Does it make sense? And I've got friends on both sides, women that have been harassed, and then friends that are on the opposite side with some lawsuits where they haven't been given a chance really to speak. So, in my view, I thought you did a very good job of presenting a very difficult topic. You had a confident presence throughout. You had a calm voice. You had very good eye contact. And I think the one thing that perhaps with a little bit more time would have been very much more helpful was at least being given a chance. I know Mike was shaking the red flag there, but you did a very good job in deflecting some very aggressive responses to those questions. And I thought with the way that you handled the first couple of questions that you would, just time being allowed, you would have been able to answer that final question very well, because we all have different viewpoints on clothing and whatnot. And I thought with how well you were doing in your speech that being allowed to answer that would have just allowed you to come away with more persuasiveness at the very end of the speech. So I thought you did a fantastic job. You kept calm and composed, and you did a very good job. So I'm going to turn it back to Ernst for more stories on your
This is part of our meeting where we have our technical table to give us an update as to how well the meeting went. Starting out with our R counter, Bob Levy.
Fascinating topics. I'm so glad my wife is not here. Because, being an atheist makes me the happiest when I'm on the cusp of sexual harassment.
Wow, man.
Oh, okay, so Phyllis, we had 6 ahs, 2 so's, and 2 double clutches. Candido was 1 double clutch. Macarena was just 3 double clutches. Gus was clean 0. Thank you for the $5. Steve was 1 double clutch. Teryl was 1 ah and 1 double clutch. Ernst was 1 ah. And Shayne was clean. Martin was 1 so and 1 butt.
Next in line is our timer, Mike Hughes, to give his report.
Today we got a little long-winded, but I'm on the cusp of throwing a red card at you, so I'll throw that card in there because it's clever. Phyllis, 720. Pushing it. Candido, 758. Getting close. Macarena. Well, you stopped roughly at 640, but then we were at 1140, and then there's Rich. So, table topics, Rich, 31 seconds. Gus, 1 minute 15. Steve, 2:01. Evaluations, Teryl, 3:13. Getting a little long. Shayne, 3:01. You're close. Close. And Martin, 3:09. Right on time. Much better.
Grammarian, Stacy.
So everybody did very well using the word of the day. Julia used it twice. Phyllis, Macarena, Ernst, Shayne, Martin, Bob, and Mike all used it once. And then the one of the statements that really kind of stood out to me, took me back to my childhood, was a mad scientist trying to take over the world like Pinky and the Brain. Takes me back to watching Pinky and the Brain and Animaniacs when I was a kid.
That was a great show.
Thank you.
In regards to the general evaluation of the meeting, the room was set up in time, temperature is fine, flags are set up. Our Toastmaster did an incredible job in keeping the meeting moving. However, looking at the agenda, it was kind of confused in the beginning, talk about Phyllis, it says getting comfortable with visual aids. I was trying to figure it out, and in fact it was full variety. So that's the only thing I need to do that.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm asking Macarena to come up here to finish the business section of our meeting.
Do we have any guests today?
Yep. Right here?
We do.
There's one there, there's one right there, there's one there.
All right, would you like to stand up and introduce yourselves and let us know how you liked the meeting or what you thought about the meeting?
I'm Teresa Cook. I work at Scholastic Book Fairs with a couple of the girls here. So this is my first meeting. And I thought it was actually really interesting. It's very fast-paced. The hour went exceptionally well. Maybe a little less than an hour for me. Sorry about that. It went pretty quick, so it was good.
Thank you.
You work with her.
I'm Kerri. I also am from Scholastic Book Fairs. I work very closely with some of these ladies here.
this is my first meeting, and yes, I'm still taking it all in because it's so fast-paced, but it's really interesting, a lot of fun, and I would definitely be back. So you guys are all a lot of fun.
Be a member. Because you're a guy, that's why she didn't notice you.
I mean,
So I think I'm getting the hang of it. And it's a lot of interesting topics.
All right, I'm going to go over the schedule for next week. Stacy, Sergeant of Arms. We are missing a Toastmaster, but I'm going to just continue going. Speakers, Devin, Lori, and Julia. You guys ready? Table topics, Rich.
Guess what the topic's gonna be.
General Evaluator Gus Davies, Evaluators Mike Hughes, Stephen Morgan, and we do need a third evaluator. Op counter Phyllis, Grammarian Barbara, and timer Stacy. Yes, we do need a Toastmaster. Anyone want to volunteer?
Can I redeem myself?
I think that's a good idea. Bring it in.
I'll email you the template.
And a third evaluator.
Kerri Bird.
All right, just a couple of announcements. Our district conference is November 12th. And also we do have open house coming up. That's November 1st. We will have only 2 speakers that day. And the remainder of the time we are going to use it to talk about our club, how wonderful it is, our wonderful speakers, and try to get more members to join. All right? Yes?
I passed out little things for my concert. Yes, it's Friday and Saturday. If anyone wants to go.
All right.
Free drinks.
Anyone else?
After.
All right, I adjourn this meeting.
All right.